Ghostbusters. Ghosts Are Us. Chapter 1. A thick layer of dust coated the front desk of the firehouse. Janine sighed as she aimlessly flipped through an old magazine, having already memorized each page after months of the same tedious routine. Business had been slow for the Ghostbusters ever since their climactic battle with Gozer. Without any major ghost outbreaks or paranormal occurrences, the phones stayed silent and the containment unit sat mostly empty. Upstairs, Ray stared at the blank monitor screens with his head resting glumly on one hand. Across from him, Winston let out an exaggerated yawn. Even Slimer, normally zipping around, cheerfully gobbling snacks, floated listlessly near the ceiling. Another day, another whole lot of nothing, Winston grumbled. Ray sighed. I know. I'm almost hoping for a caller ID spook or something just to break up the monotony. At that moment, the firehouse doors burst open as Peter and Egon rushed in, laden with smoking ghost traps and positively beaming. Good news, gentlemen, we're back in business, Peter declared. You won't believe what's been going on out there today, said Egon, setting his traps on a workbench. It appears ectoplasmic activity in the tri-state area has increased exponentially in the last few hours. Winston and Ray leapt up excitedly. Are you serious? Ray said. Ghost sightings, actual, legitimate hauntings? More than sightings, full manifestations across the boroughs, Egon confirmed, his eyes alight. Poltergeist disturbances, phantom apparitions, spectral entities of all shapes and sizes. We're talking a regular ghost outbreak, boys, Peter chimed in. Seems like half the spirits in the etheric plane are paying good ol' NYC a visit. Ray pumped his fist triumphantly. Yes, I knew this dry spell couldn't last forever. Slimer, too, was zipping about again with renewed vigor. The Ghostbusters geared up, jumping into action for the first time in ages. As Ecto-1 roared out of the firehouse, sirens blaring, Janine just smiled and started fielding calls. Chapter 2. The city streets teemed with supernatural activity as the Ecto-1 sped towards its first destination. Ghosts and ghouls of all shapes and sizes could be seen swooping around buildings, terrorizing pedestrians and smashing windows. I've got to hand it to you fellas. This is one humdinger of an outbreak, Winston remarked, gazing out the window in awe at the rampant apparitions. No kidding. I can't remember the last time we had multiple Class 5 entities manifesting at once like this, said Ray. Whatever's caused this sudden spike in free-roaming vaporous spirits, it's big. Peter nodded gravely. Let's just hope we can wrangle them all before the city has a complete meltdown. Their first stop was at an Italian restaurant whose patrons had all fled screaming after a glowing, green apparition flooded the premises with ectoplasm. The Ghostbusters charged in to find an angry slime-esque entity hurling plates and overturning tables. All right, Ugly, are ready for your one-way ticket back to the spirit realm? Peter quipped, powering up his proton pack. He, Ray, and Egon blasted the spook from all angles, weakening its ectoplasmic form before Winston could finally trap it. That's one down, couple hundred more to go, said Winston, stowing the smoking trap. Back on the road, the Ghostbusters soon encountered their next target, what appeared to be a 12-foot-tall specter made of pure electricity that had manifested in the middle of traffic, terrorizing motorists and causing car accidents left and right. Electroshock entity, Class 7, Egon declared. Watch out for those tendrils. The team once again sprang into action, weaving between abandoned vehicles to dodge the Ghost's dangerous discharges, and ultimately dissipate its sparking form. The creature let out an anguished howl as it was sucked down into the trap. As the day wore on, similar scenes played out all over New York. The Ghostbusters busting mischievous, scale-covered goblins from a pet store, oily transparent blobs from a sewer tunnel, even a headless horseman spirit trampling through Central Park. No matter where they turned, more unrestrained apparitions awaited. The Ghostbusters filled trap after trap, racing against time to contain the outbreak. They even had to call in Lua Tully for backup as the chaos continued mounting. "This is getting out of hand. It's like every ghost we trap, 3 more take its place," Winston panted during a rare moment between busts. "Statistically speaking, there's no way this is a coincidence," Egon said. "To have so many full torso manifestations spontaneously occurring across a wide geographic range, it defies paranormal precedents." Peter nodded. "No kidding, something seriously weird is going on here." Just then, the CB radio crackled to life, Janine calling in a Priority 1 alert near City Hall. The Ghostbusters sprung into action once more. Chapter 3. As Ecto-1 pulled up outside City Hall, the Ghostbusters caught their first glimpse of the madness awaiting them. The historic building crawled with hundreds of small, mischievous specters that had citizens fleeing in all directions. Strange cackles and shrieks echoed through the air as the pesky poltergeists broke windows, knocked over trash cans, ripped down lampposts, and generally wreaked ethereal havoc. "I hate to say it, guys, but I think we're going to need a bigger trap," Winston said, surveying the chaos. "No kidding. This is the biggest swarm of full torso ectoplasmic manifestations I've ever seen," exclaimed Ray. The Ghostbusters knew they had their work cut out for them. Working in pairs to cover more ground, they fanned out to surround City Hall. Peter and Winston took the east side, Ray and Egon the west. Slimer, eager to help his friends, buzzed around assisting however he could. "All right, you transparent troublemakers, playtime's over," Peter shouted, powering up his proton pack. He and Winston blasted away at the spirits, herding them away from bystanders while trying to disperse and ensnare them. But no sooner had they captured one cluster than 3 more would swoop in to take its place. On the other side, Ray and Egon fought through similar hordes. The crowds of cackling specters swarmed Ecto-1, rocking it violently back and forth. "We've got to stabilize the vehicle before they knock it over," Egon yelled over the din. Ray ran to press his back against Ecto-1, firing his proton stream wildly to drive the ghosts back, while Egon released the parking brake and engaged the emergency air shocks to anchor the wheels. For minutes that seemed like hours, the exhausting pattern continued, as scattered moments of triumph trapping a handful of spirits, followed by endless waves of new ghastly arrivals. The Ghostbusters filled trap after smoking trap, fighting relentlessly through fatigue. Just when it seemed no end was in sight, the crowds finally began to thin. The chaotic swarms turned to scattered clusters, then just lone straggler spirits swooping about. With a final determined effort, the exhausted team captured the last few remaining ghosts. As the smoking traps piled up and an eerie quiet settled over City Hall once more, the Ghostbusters breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Tell me that was the last of them," Winston panted, leaning against Ecto-1. Ray shook his head. "I had a feeling the party's just getting started." He nodded skyward, where ominous dark clouds were now gathering over the city. Peals of thunder rumbled, and lightning flashed as the wind kicked up. "Oh man," Peter groaned. "Let me guess. We've got more busting to do before this night's over." Egon checked the PK meter, its antennae flashing wildly. I'm afraid so, but the ectoplasmic surge appears to be dissipating westward. I'd hypothesize the epicenter is moving away from City Hall. Then we'd better move with it, said Winston. This ain't over till the fat lady sings. They hopped back into Ecto 1, speeding off into the stormy night as Janine radioed in reports of more ghostly disturbances erupting throughout the city. Chapter 4. Hours later, the Ghostbusters pulled wearily back into their firehouse garage as the first light of dawn peeked over the horizon. Janine's phone rang incessantly with frightened eyewitness reports, but mercifully no new major ghost outbreaks had occurred since their last bust. Ray plopped himself down on the couch with a drawn-out groan. His glasses sat askew, and his hair stuck up wildly in all directions after a long night of busting. I don't know about you guys, but I'm about ready to take a long vacation after a marathon night like that. Winston just shook his head as he cracked open a much-needed beer. Seriously, I'm beat to hell, and my proton pack sure took one hell of a beating too. Gonna need some serious recoup time after dealing with more ghosts in one night than we've seen in months. No kidding, Peter grumbled, gingerly removing his own sparking, busted proton pack. He turned to Egon. I'd say we've earned a little R&R after the night we just had. What do you say we hang up by "gone fishing" sign and let someone else handle the spooks for a while? But Egon wasn't listening. Hunched over a lab table, he tinkered intently with a smoking ghost trap, analyzing the readings on his PK meter. Egon, little R&R? Peter tried again. Oh, we can rest later, Egon mumbled, not looking up from his work. I want to take a closer look at these entities first. Their ectoplasmic readings are quite unusual. Peter just rolled his eyes. Always the consummate scientist. Ray limped over to join Egon in examining the traps. Now that you mention it, some of those specters did seem awfully powerful for their classification, he noted. And the sheer number we encountered, it was an unprecedented outbreak on a massive scale. He turned to Winston with an excited gleam in his eyes that belied his obvious exhaustion. This whole thing is extraordinary. Don't you want to figure out what caused such a sudden, huge surge in free-roaming vaporous apparitions? Winston just chuckled and cracked open another beer for Ray too. With you two on the case, I know you'll have it all figured out in no time. The sound of the basement storage unit door creaking open drew their attention then. All eyes turned to see Slimer emerging, his little arms loaded with a strange ecto-green box. Hey, little Spud, what you got there? Peter asked. Slimer deposited the box proudly on the table. The Ghostbusters gathered round to examine the object closer. It appeared to be some kind of container or carrying case, unlike anything they had seen before. Strange futuristic technology was integrated into the casing, as well as anti-ectoplasmic shielding. Egon exclaimed. This box is designed to safely contain and transport spectral entities. He turned it over slowly, examining every side. Fascinating, the micro-laser technology coupled with the negatively charged particulate coating. I've never seen anything like it. Ray's eyebrows shot up. Anti-ecto shielding, but what would ghosts want with a containment box designed to block their own ecto energy? More importantly, where did Slimer get this gizmo? Peter asked suspiciously. Slimer babbled excitedly, miming a shopping exercise. I think he's saying he got it from some kind of store, Winston offered. Hey, there's some kind of logo on the side here, Ray noted, pointing out a small engraved emblem. It read, "Ghosts are us." "Ghosts are us," Peter echoed in disbelief. Seriously, what kind of place sells ghost gear with a name like that? Egon's expression hardened. "I have a hunch this may be ground zero for our outbreak. Based on the night's events, as well as this mysterious piece of technology, the Ghostbusters surmised that some unknown entity was deliberately equipping ghosts with special tools and protective gear, possibly enabling the mass ectoplasmic manifestation they had just endured all across the city. I think it's time we looked up this "Ghosts Are Us" and asked a few questions, said Winston ominously. A quick web search revealed an address for the eerie retailer. The shop sat sandwiched between dimly lit psychic reading parlors and strange occult stores down a dingy back alley on the Lower East Side. Littered with ghostly trinkets and baubles in the foggy windows, an illuminated neon sign read, "Ghosts Are Us," in flickering lettering. "Subtle," Peter remarked wryly. Peering inside, the Ghostbusters could see the shop was filled wall to wall with aisles of bizarre ghost-themed merchandise they had never laid eyes on before. Anti-ecto containment cubes like Slimers, glowing vials of ectoplasm, and much more. Ray's eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. "Whoa, look at all this amazing spectral technology." "Easy there, Tex, don't forget we're here to bust these bozos, not shop for fun new toys," Peter cautioned. Still, an ominous feeling permeated the store interior. What was this place, and what did it have to do with the night's outbreak? Guns drawn and senses alert, the Ghostbusters entered cautiously, prepared for anything. Chapter 5. Pushing open the door, a small bell jingled overhead announcing the Ghostbusters' arrival. At first glance, the store appeared empty. Aisles of bizarre ghost tech and anti-ecto gadgets lined every shelf, but not a soul stirred inside. "Hello, anybody here?" Ray called out tentatively. Only silence answered. Still on high alert, proton packs charged and traps at the ready, the team ventured farther inside. A thick layer of dust coated the merchandise, suggesting nothing had been disturbed here in quite some time. Cobwebs draped across the ceiling. "Real hot spot, ain't it?" Winston remarked. "I got a bad feeling about this place." Peter peered down the empty aisles. "Well, if there is some spook shop proprietor illegally arming apparitions here, they sure ain't rolling out the welcome mat for us." "Let's take a look around," Egon said. "But be alert, the entity behind this outlet appears to have access to some highly advanced spectral weaponry." The Ghostbusters fanned out, sifting through the store's unusual wares. Glowing amulets claiming to enhance a specter's psychokinetic powers, boxes of Ecto Plus designed to supercharge ghostly energy, even an entire shelf of padded anti-ectoplasm suits. Ray let out a low whistle examining a sleek, high-tech spook blaster. "This tech is incredible. If I didn't know better, I'd say these gadgets came straight from the future." "Yeah, well, remind me to return them there when we find a creep behind this little operation," Peter muttered. Just then, a spectral figure began to slowly materialize behind the front counter. The apparition appeared humanoid in shape, wearing an anti-ecto armored suit and cowl over its face. Strange smoke drifted from beneath the armor as it solidified. "Welcome to Ghosts Are Us," the figure rasped in an unearthly voice. "How may I assist you gentlemen today in your paranormal pursuits?" Ray and Egon both raised their proton guns, but Peter stepped forward calmly. "Yeah, hi, name's Dr. Venkman, Ghostbusters. Maybe you've heard of us. we'd just like to ask you a few questions. But before Peter could finish, the phantom figure raised a glowing gauntlet, firing a powerful burst of ecto-energy that sent the team scattering. I was afraid you meddlesome men might stick your noses where they don't belong, the ghost snarled. But this is not your concern. He ripped off his smoking cowl, revealing a grotesque face with hollow eyes and a ghoulish grin. By arming restless spirits with the tools to fully manifest, Ghosts R Us provides a necessary service, the ghost declared. No simple busters will disrupt our work. With that, he phased through the wall and out of sight. The Ghostbusters regrouped, shaken but undeterred. Okay then, not big on chatting noted, said Peter, picking himself off the floor. We need to shut down this operation now before that Spectre can enact whatever he's planning, Winston said. But just then, their radios crackled to life, Janine calling in a Priority 1 alert downtown, where a massive ghostly form was now rampaging through the streets. From her description, it sounded like whatever phantom had confronted them in the shop. Come on, we gotta move, Ray yelled. Pedestrians ran screaming as the towering ghost ripped through the heart of downtown, flipping vehicles and tearing up chunks of asphalt with each lumbering step. Strange energy crackled around its armored form. The Ghostbusters swerved onto the scene in Ecto 1. There's our cowardly spook shop owner, Peter called out, drawing the team's attention to the familiar face within the giant Spectre's head. They deployed proton packs and traps, ready to take down the massive entity just like any other ghost. But as their particle streams made contact, the creature just cackled. You foolhardy fools will have to do better than that, the phantom taunted. To the Ghostbusters' shock, their usual streams were repelled by a glowing shield surrounding the entity's body. Our proton energy has no effect, Ray exclaimed. The team scurried for cover as debris rained down around them. They continued blasting desperately at the creature, trying to pierce its protective barrier without success. Inside his glowing outer shell, the ghost laughed mockingly. Give up, Ghostbusters. My ecto-amplification armor makes me impervious to your pathetic weapons. To prove his point, the Spectre swung an armored fist down towards Ecto 1. The Ghostbusters dove clear just as the blow smashed the vehicle completely in half, crushing it like a tin can. No, Winston cried out. He just junked Ecto, said Ray. Now what do we do? The phantom loomed over them, energy crackling. Now you perish. Scatter, Peter yelled. They broke apart again as more crushing blows leveled the surrounding buildings. From the cover of an overturned bus, the team regrouped. Man, this spook's packing some major firepower, Winston panted. Ray gazed upwardly at the entity still rampaging unchecked nearby. You're right, our usual equipment doesn't stand a chance against that kind of amplified ecto-energy. His face fell. For the first time ever, the Ghostbusters are totally powerless against a ghost. Indeed, the situation looked dire. With Ecto 1 destroyed and their proton packs ineffective, it seemed as if the team was utterly and hopelessly outmatched. Chapter 6. A sense of despair threatened to overtake the Ghostbusters as the supercharged Spectre continued its rampage through downtown, unhindered by their usual ghost-busting technology. Behind the creature's glowing visage, its master, the sinister phantom from Ghosts R Us, it could be seen orchestrating the chaos with a twisted grin. Okay, I'll say it, This looks bad, Winston sighed defeatedly, as debris rained down around their makeshift shelter. Real bad. But Egon held up a hand. Wait, I have an idea. He fixed Ray with an intense look. We need to get back to the firehouse immediately so I can analyze the spectral energy readings from tonight's outbreak. Ray nodded, understanding Egon's thought process instantly. If we can compare our data from those earlier captures to this entity's energy signature, we might find a way to counteract his enhanced powers. Exactly, said Egon. Hope kindled in the Ghostbusters once more. Well, what are we waiting for? Peter said, peering out around the edge of the overturned bus to where their attacker was still preoccupied toppling buildings. This big ugly's not going anywhere. Let's make some tracks. Staying low amidst the debris and destruction, the team slipped away unseen, making their way on foot through back alleys back to the firehouse. The lab inside was just as they had left it, traps and ghost techs scattered everywhere from their earlier analysis. While Winston patched up their proton packs and Ray helped map out a plan to combat the downtown specter, Egon immediately set to work examining their data and comparing it to new readings from that entity. Pages of calculations flew as he cross-referenced, analyzed, and evaluated the streams of information. After what seemed like an eternity of frenzied analysis, Egon finally looked up. I've got it, he announced. I know how that ghost has managed to elude our particle throwers. The others gathered around eagerly as Egon explained. The apparitions we battled tonight all wore some form of protective gear or armor made from a negatively charged ectoplasmic isotope, he began. This coating insulates their entity frequencies from the positively charged streams of our proton packs. Winston scratched his head. So, the gizmos from that ghost's are a store make the ghosts impervious to our weapons? Exactly, Egon confirmed. But I believe if we could invert the polarity of the particle flow within our streams to match the negative charge of their ecto-shielding, it could cancel out the effects and make our streams effective again. Ray finished excitedly. Peter clapped Egon on the back. Egon, you're a genius. All we need to do is flip the electrical wacamacalet on our packs and it's bustin' time once again. Egon hesitated. Well, the process won't be quite that simple. We would need to completely rewire and reconfigure the proton packs to achieve stable inverted polarity, and I'm afraid we just don't have the time for that at present. The team's excitement dimmed. If they couldn't modify their equipment in time, what hope did they have against the souped-up spook still awaiting them downtown? Winston shook his head. There's gotta be something we can do. Otherwise, the Phantom's gonna level all of Manhattan. Ray pondered the problem, glancing around their cluttered lab space for inspiration, until his eyes landed on the smoking ghost trap from earlier. Suddenly, his face lit up. I've got it, Ray exclaimed, holding up the trap excitedly. We may not be able to overhaul the proton packs fast enough, but what if we could modify the polarity on just one of our traps instead? Egon's eyebrows shot up as he considered Ray's suggestion. Then he broke into a smile. Raymond, you're a genius. Chapter 7. After an intense hour of calculations and reconstructions, Egon declared the prototype trap ready for its maiden test voyage. He had successfully inverted the polarity of the particle mechanism inside, creating a trap attuned to the same negatively charged ectospectral frequency as their shielded foes. All right, give it some juice, Peter said eagerly. Winston, and Ray gathered around as Egon activated the reconfigured trap. Immediately, the device began emitting an unusual dark-colored anti-proton energy field. Egon whistled. Strong reaction. The negatively charged particles are stable. He turned to the others. I believe we have our ghost-capturing recurve trap. I sure hope you're right, said Winston. That phantom's been on a rampage for too long already. We need to shut it down. Agreed. Let's go nail this spook, said Peter, hefting his proton pack with renewed determination. Armed with their untested new trap, the team headed back downtown to face the supercharged specter. They arrived to find the area in shambles, chunks of towering skyscrapers ripped away, streets cracked and overturned, wrecked vehicles strewn everywhere. Frightened citizens screamed and fled, while evil laughter echoed from within the glowing entity, still hovering over the destruction. All right, tall, dark, and gruesome, playtime's over. Peter called up to the creature. The phantom turned, fixing the Ghostbusters with its hollow gaze. Ah, the failed Ghostbusters return. Come to embarrass yourselves once more with your useless gadgets? That's what you think, spook, said Winston. Get ready to be busted. On Peter's signal, they powered up their proton packs, unleashing everything they had at the specter. But just as before, the positively charged streams were repelled by the entity's glowing ecto-shield. From within his protective bubble, the ghost just chuckled. Pathetic mortals, you are powerless against me. He swept a clawed hand sideways, sending the Ghostbusters flying backwards in a shockwave. Damn, his deflector shield's still at full power, grunted Winston, struggling back to his feet. Peter shook his head dizzily. I felt that one in my molars. Any other bright ideas, Egon? But Egon was already prepping the modified trap. We have to get closer if we can accurately target his spectral frequency point blank. The inverted polarity trap should work. Taking cover behind an overturned bus, the team inched closer to where the cackling specter hovered. As they readied themselves to sprint and slide beneath the ghost's defenses, Ray offered an encouraging smile. Let's grab this creep and send him back to the spirit realm for good. On Peter's signal, they took off in a full sprint directly at the creature. As expected, their proton streams fizzled uselessly against his shield bubble. But this time, as they passed beneath him, Egon hurled the prototype trap directly at the specter's core. It latched onto the ghost's armor with a loud clamp, then promptly shorted out and sputtered away. Peter skidded to a stop. Please tell me that was supposed to happen. Egon's shoulders slumped. It's not working. The trap isn't generating enough concentrated negatively charged energy to neutralize his armor. The phantom swatted the sputtering trap away and rounded on the Ghostbusters, energy crackling menacingly. Did you honestly believe your pathetic toy could stop me? The creature boomed. Ray gulped. Any other ideas, Egon? But Egon shook his head grimly. It appeared their makeshift trap had failed. They were still powerless against this unstoppable specter. The team fled for cover once more as the enraged ghost resumed its relentless assault, ripping up chunks of buildings and vehicles with ease. He's going to bring down the whole block at this rate, Winston yelled over the din. Peter watched the wanton destruction helplessly. Without a working gizmo to bust this spook, we're basically just sitting ducks. And the situation was growing dire. The supercharged ghost clearly wouldn't stop until all of New York lay in ruins beneath it. For the first time in their career, the Ghostbusters truly found themselves utterly defeated by a spirit. Unless they could somehow still turn the tide, The city appeared doomed. Chapter 8. As the sound of crumbling buildings and maniacal laughter echoed all around them, Ray gazed worthily through the dust and debris at the glowing specter still rampaging unchecked nearby. "He's just too powerful," Ray lamented, ducking as a chunk of concrete whizzed past. "Even our inverted trap can't contain this entity." "Don't sweat it, Tex," said Peter, though his usual cocky demeanor was missing. "We'll figure a way out of this mess, we always do." Privately, though, even Peter had to admit their options were looking pretty limited. With the proton packs ineffective against the creature thanks to its ecto-shielding, and the reconfigured trap fizzling out from insufficient power, the Ghostbusters found themselves in the unprecedented position of being totally stymied by an opponent. Winston shook his head as the ghost laughed and toppled another building, sending up plumes of dust and sparks. "That phantom ain't gonna quit tearing up Manhattan until we find some way to bust it." Egon pondered the problem silently as he tinkered with the sputtering trap, desperate to coax more power from its overloaded circuits. If he could just boost the negatively charged particle output enough to puncture that entity's protective barrier. Suddenly, his eyes lit up behind his glasses. Boosting the power output alone might not work, but combining the trap with an additional ecto-energy source just might provide the extra surge needed to finally neutralize their foe's armor. "I've got it," Egon exclaimed. He turned to Slimer, who was hovering worriedly nearby. "Slimer, I need you for an important job." The little green ghost looked startled to be called upon, but immediately snapped to attention. Egon quickly outfitted Slimer with a specially designed energy harness connected directly to the modified trap's power core. "All right, here's the plan," Egon told the others. "This harness will allow Slimer to channel his own ectoplasmic energy directly into the trap's particle stream." Winston nodded, understanding instantly. "So the little spud's juice gives the trap the extra kick it needs to bust that big baddie." "Exactly," said Egon. "With the additional surge, the negatively charged particles should be able to penetrate the entity's armor and incapacitate it." "Of course," said Ray. "The trap wasn't strong enough alone, but with Slimer's energy amping it up, we might just stand a chance now." Slimer saluted, ready for his important mission. Peter grinned. "All right, little buddy, let's go bag as this spook." Armed once more with their modified trap, now with Slimer's power-boosting addition, the team ventured out to confront the ghost again. The creature was ravaging an office building, but turned as the determined Ghostbusters approached. "Back again," it rumbled. "You mortals are gluttons for punishment. We'll see who's punished when we bust you back to the spirit realm, spooky," Peter shouted. The team charged, proton streams blazing. Once more, they were repelled by the ghost's glowing shield. But this time, as they darted beneath the creature, Egon hurled the enhanced trap directly at its core. Sparks flew as the trap latched on. Slimer gritted his teeth, channeling every ounce of spectral energy into the device. The trap strained and sputtered, but held. Inverted particles pierced the ghost's armor, short-circuiting its protective bubble. Howling in rage, the specter dropped to the ground with a crash that shook the block. But with its shield finally neutralized, the creature was vulnerable once more to the proton streams. "Give it everything you've got," yelled Winston. Together, the team blasted the weakened ghost with a concentrated proton barrage. Finally, its glowing form began to destabilize, flickering wildly until Egon was able to deploy the trap and capture the rampaging specter at last. As the smoke cleared, the Ghostbusters caught their breath amidst the rubble of the ravaged block. Slimer floated over, giving them a dazed thumbs up. "Nice work, Spud," Peter said wearily. For the first time all night, the Ghostbusters could rest easy knowing the chaos was finally over. Against all odds, they had found a way to defeat the unstoppable. Chapter 9. A celebratory mood filled the firehouse following the Ghostbusters' hard-fought victory downtown. Though New York had endured a vicious paranormal onslaught, and the team had suffered losses both material and emotional, their perseverance and teamwork won out in the end. "I tell ya, going up against that souped-up spook was touch and go for a while there," said Winston, nursing a cold drink in the rec room. "But we pulled together and busted that sucker right in the end." Ray nodded enthusiastically. "We never would have cracked that ghost's ecto-armor if Egon hadn't invented the inverted particle trap, and Slimer gave us the extra juice when we needed it most." He held up his hand, and the little green ghost zipped over to give him a high five. "All in a night's work for New York's finest spectral exterminators," said Peter confidently, kicking his feet up. "We took that big ugly's best shot and came out busting. Just goes to show you, the Ghostbusters can handle anything the spirit world throws at us." Their celebration was interrupted by the loud sputtering and sparks of lab equipment on the fritz. Egon came rushing over, wafting away smoke and looking concerned. "We may have neutralized the downtown entity, but our work is far from finished," he warned gravely. "The influx of occult technology and empowered apparitions threatens the barrier between the spectral and physical planes on an unprecedented scale." Peter rolled his eyes. "Always gotta rain on the parade, Hispanics. What's got your spectre spidey senses tingling that?" "Residual readings from the entity's armor," said Egon, holding up his still crackling PKE meter. "The psychokinetic energy it generated was off the charts. I believe it may indicate a deeper source of unrest in the spirit world." Winston frowned. "You really think taking out that one spook didn't fix things for good?" "Unfortunately not. All available data points to outside forces deliberately destabilizing spectral energies in New York on a massive scale." Egon turned to Ray. "We need to investigate the technologies fueling this supernatural disruption at their source." Ray's eyes lit up. "You mean focusing our research on how that Phantom's armor manipulated ectoplasmic frequencies to expand its psychokinetic manifestations?" Egon nodded. "Precisely. If we could analyze the particulate shielding and inversion methodology in greater depth, it may elucidate the origin point of these enhancing accuracies." I speak English only, guys," Peter cut in. "Want to translate from nerd for the rest of us?" Ray chuckled. "Basically, we need to crack open that ghost's protective suit and figure out what makes it tick, then hopefully trace the ecto-tech back to whoever built it." Peter rubbed his chin. "Gotcha. We bust this spook's shiny new toys to knock 'em down a peg and find the brainiac ghost arming these goons in the first place." He grinned. "Sounds like a plan." Egon retrieved a fragment of the downtown specter's still smoking armor from the containment unit to examine. But after extensive spectral analysis, he shook his head in dismay. "The microcircuitry is fused. I can't trace the power source or decrypt the operating system without an intact piece to study." "Too bad we couldn't grab that ghost's whole suit for you to play mad scientist with," said Winston. Ray perked up. "Wait a minute. Maybe we can't?" He turned eagerly to Slimer. "You got that anti-ecto cube from Ghosts R Us, right, little buddy?" Slimer nodded, then his eyes went wide, realizing what Ray was suggesting. He shook his head and babbled fearfully. "Come on, it's okay," Ray assured him. "We just need to test whether Egon's recurred trap works on a ghost with one of those protective suits." Still reluctant, but willing to help his friends, Slimer retrieved one of the anti-ecto garments from the storage room and squeezed into it. Immediately, he yelped as the outfit constricted his slimy form uncomfortably. "Sorry, Slimer. I know it's not built for comfort," Ray apologized. "We really appreciate you being our test subject." Slimer gave a little salute, though he still looked nervous. Egon carefully analyzed the energy readings as Slimer hovered at the center of the room. The anti-ecto suit appeared to be generating its own protective resonance field, just as their previous armored foe had done. "The armor's functioning properly, excellent," said Egon. "Commencing recurve trap test now." He powered up the modified trap and tossed it directly at Slimer, but once again it merely sputtered and shorted out against the ghost's shielded form. Slimer cocked his head in surprise. Peter snapped his fingers. "Of course, we overcharged the gizmo taking down Mr. Tall, Dark, and Ugly downtown. The capacitor must have blown." "Yes, it will need a full reset before operational again," Egon confirmed. "But at least we know the trap design is sound in theory." Slimer wasted no time phasing out of the restrictive anti-ecto garment. He babbled in relief, clearly happy to be done playing lab rat. Ray chuckled sympathetically. "Thanks for being our test dummy, little Spud. Hopefully next time the trap works, so we can get a working ghost suit sample. And get to the bottom of these amped-up apparitions," added Winston. Egon nodded, examining the trap's burnt-out circuits. "We appear to be on the right path, but there are still missing variables in this equation, and until we solve it, New York rests on precarious ground." The mood in the firehouse turned solemn once more. Though they had won this battle, the Ghostbusters knew a war was still brewing on the horizon. Chapter 10. A tense quiet had settled over the city following the Ghostbusters' last paranormal showdown. No reports of rampaging specters came in for several days as New Yorkers attempted to recover from the extensive damage and chaos. But Egon knew better than to believe the supernatural threat was over. "It's the calm before the storm," he warned one afternoon, fine-tuning the reconfigured trap's burned-out circuits yet again. "Given the unprecedented scale of the previous outbreak, this ectoplasmic energy lull is highly irregular. All my data indicates another surge is imminent." Peter shrugged, kicking back with the latest issue of GQ. "So more ghosts are coming, big deal. We've got the recurred Wakamaklet now to bust them." "Recurve trap," Ray gently corrected him. "And I hope so. We're still operating off theories until we can field test it properly." Winston nodded gravely. "One thing's for sure, we better be ready for whatever's coming next." As if on cue, a Class 7 spectral reading suddenly triggered every alarm on Egon's monitor board. The PKE meter went berserk. "We've got massive ectoplasmic activity converging on Central Park," Egon exclaimed. Grabbing weapons and packs, the Ghostbusters raced to intercept the surging spiritual energy now focusing on the landmark green space. They tore onto the scene as panicked civilians fled the area and skidded to a stop, mouths agape. An entire army of armored apparitions filled the sky over Central Park. Each ghostly soldier wore a specialized ecto-suit like the downtown entity had used. Crackling energy and malevolent grins emanated from the formation floating among the high-rises. And down below, surveying the chaos proudly, stood the phantom from Ghosts R Us. "You meddlesome men are too late," he called up to the Ghostbusters. "The revolution has begun. My unstoppable ecto-enhanced legions will reduce this city to ruin." Ray gulped nervously. Reconverting just one trap may not cut it this time." "We need a miracle here," muttered Winston. But the specters were already fanning out, unleashing havoc across Midtown. Egon quickly surveyed their equipment, then turned to the others. "We'll divide and neutralize," he ordered decisively. Winston and Ray took the west flank, where apparitions were dive-bombing skyscrapers. Though their proton streams had little effect, they drew the soldiers away from civilians while buying time for Egon's plan. Meanwhile, Egon worked furiously with Peter to deploy a perimeter of enhanced ghost traps around the park, all modified to the negatively charged recurve frequency. "This had better work, Spangs," said Peter anxiously as more troops descended. Once the traps were in place, Egon and Peter fired boson darts into the fray, goading the spectral platoon towards the traps. Ray and Winston herded more their way on the opposite side. One by one, the equipped entities fell victim to the inverted traps surrounding the area, just as Egon had hoped. Each defeat destabilized their unified formation further, until finally the last few ghosts tried fleeing back to their leader. But the Ghosts R Us phantom merely cackled. "You've lost, mortals. My army is not so easily toppled." With that, he opened a glowing portal, and hundreds more armored specters began pouring out, dripping with menace. The Ghostbusters stood frozen in dismay. This onslaught was beyond anything they had ever faced before. Manhattan teetered on the brink of an all-out, ghostly invasion. Just as despair threatened to take hold, a familiar bubbly voice cried, "Yoo-hoo," from above. Slimer came zipping onto the scene, barreling directly into the emerging spectral troops. Before they could react, he had knocked dozens of soldiers back through the still open portal. "A thaboy spod," Peter cheered. Wasting no time, Egon, Ray, and Winston blasted the portal generator, while Peter and Slimer handled the disoriented ghosts. With a sputter, the gateway collapsed, cutting off further reinforcements. "All right, bust 'em and trap 'em," yelled Winston. For a non-stop hour, the Ghostbusters battled on, driving the invading spirits into trap after trap. The glow of dark matter lit up Central Park as ghost after ghost was captured and contained. With his soldiers defeated and his portal destroyed, the Ghosts R Us leader could only watch in helpless fury as his uprising was quashed. "You've won this battle, but we will rise again," he vowed vehemently before a proton blast from Peter destabilized his form enough for Egon to trap him as well. As the smoke cleared over Central Park, the Ghostbusters took in the scene of destruction and chaos that remained, but also breathed a collective sigh of relief. Against impossible odds, they had managed to thwart a full-blown poltergeist invasion of New York. Yet the victory felt hollow. The source of the unrest remained, as did the threat of even greater turmoil to come. But for now, the city was safe once more. Chapter 11. A somber mood filled the firehouse following the Ghostbusters' exhausting victory, holding back a spectral invasion in Central Park. They had won the battle, but the war still loomed. Now, Egon sat hunched over lab equipment, scrutinizing every inch of the Ghosts R Us ringleader's captured suit and armor. Ray assisted him, while Peter and Winston tried repairing the extensive damage to their proton packs, traps, and uniforms. The clash had taken its toll not just on the city, but their ghost-busting gear as well. "I just don't get it," sighed Ray, gazing up at the still-smoking ghost portal device confiscated from their foe. Interdimensional portal tech, anti-ecto armor, psionic energy enhancers. This stuff is light years beyond anything we've seen from specters. Ego nodded grimly, not looking up from his microscope analyzing a piece of the armor. "I believe that's because we aren't dealing with ordinary earthbound entities. The complexity of these technologies points to an intellect and understanding of spectral manipulations far beyond simple apparitions." "So you're saying some evil genius ghost mastermind cooked up these gizmos and then handed them out like Halloween candy?" asked Winston dubiously. "It's the only rational theory accounting for both the sophistication of the equipment and the increasingly unstable nature of interdimensional activity here," said Egon. "All evidence indicates a concerted effort by an unknown paranormal force to deliberately destabilize our plane of existence through technological empowerment of lesser spirits." Peter shook his head. "Ugh, and you guys say I talk too much mumbo-jumbo. Bottom line this for the rest of the class spangs." Egon sighed. "Simply put, a dangerous ghost from another realm is handing out weapons to stir up chaos, and we need to stop him." "Now that I get," said Peter. "So where do we find this spooky sugar daddy and put him out of business?" "First Egon stopped short, eyebrows raised as an alert flashed across the monitor screens. PKE readings were spiking rapidly again, this time from a dilapidated warehouse on the waterfront. Ray checked the systems in disbelief. "These readings are off the charts. Whatever's in there, it's giving off major spectral vibrations." "Looks like we got our dangerous dirtbag ghost," said Winston, hefting a proton pack. "Let's go shut this creep down for good." Armed with traps, proton packs, and recurve inverters, the Ghostbusters raced to face off against the source of the unrest once and for all. The warehouse sat silent and gloomy, almost abandoned, looking against the pier. But the energy pulsating inside was unmistakable. This was the origin point. With weapons ready, they crept inside through a side door. The expansive interior was cluttered with crates and machinery, some of it bizarre and futuristic looking. Winston whistled. "This must be the mother lode." "Fan out," Peter instructed. "But keep your eyes peeled for the big bad boss ghost." They inched forward, the ominous space seeming to grow more foreboding with every step. Then a bone-chilling voice echoed through the darkness. "Welcome, Ghostbusters, I've been expecting you." Chapter 12. At the sinister greeting, the Ghostbusters braced themselves as an ominous form materialized before them. It resembled a massive, imposed, powerfully built specter draped in a hooded ecto-enhanced armored suit. Glowing eyes shone from beneath the hood, fixing the teen with a piercing stare. "So you're the spook arming all these ghosts and trying to take over our world," said Peter, determined not to show intimidation. The looming figure chuckled coldly. "I am Apocalypse, harbinger of your realm's destruction, but your meddling ends here, mortal pests." With surprising speed for his size, Apocalypse suddenly lunged forward, swiping a clawed glove at them. The Ghostbusters scattered as the blow obliterated a stack of nearby crates. "Looks like he ain't interested in chatting," yelled Winston over the din. Indeed, Apocalypse pressed his attack ruthlessly, unleashing blasts of ecto-energy that shattered lab equipment and proton packs alike. The The team fled behind the cover of an overturned table to regroup. He's too powerful to take head-on, Egon warned. We need to strategize. Ray nodded. With all four of us blasting together, we might be able to weaken his armor enough for a trap. Worth a shot, said Peter. Let's toast this marshmallow. Coordinating their proton streams, the Ghostbusters unleashed a full frontal assault on Apocalypse. The concentrated energy managed to push their foe back briefly and destabilize sections of his suit, but only temporarily. With a furious roar, the Spectre summoned a shockwave that blew all four men backwards, slamming them painfully against the warehouse walls. Okay, new strategy, Peter groaned, struggling back up. Apocalypse advanced, ecto-energy crackling as he prepared to end them. But before the blast could connect, Slimer suddenly zoomed in from nowhere, bravely latching himself onto the Spectre's face. Good boy, Slimer, cheered Winston. The little ghost's distraction gave Egon time to grab a modified trap and hurl it directly at their foe's chest. But Apocalypse merely cackled, swatting the device away. Insolent scum, your feeble traps are useless against me. With another swing, he ripped Slimer free and sent him careening across the room with a shriek. Ray ran to check on their dazed teammate. Slimer's okay, just shaken up, he called. But Egon's right, we've got to outsmart this creep. Apocalypse had them all hopelessly outgunned. They needed to find some weakness in his otherwise impenetrable defenses. But his armor seemed totally immune to any direct assault. Egon's keen mind raced, analyzing every variable and possible angle of attack. There had to be a way, then suddenly, his eyes lit up. The armor's power source, he exclaimed. It's his only vulnerability, target the core. Trusting Egon's logic, the Ghostbusters took aim at the Spectre's chest, where Thessuit's glowing reactor was visible. They poured every last bit of juice from their proton packs directly at that focal point. Howling in outrage, Apocalypse staggered back as his impressive defenses were breached at long last. Sparks flew from his ruptured armor, and the warehouse filled with light. It's working. Keep hitting him with everything you've got, yelled Peter. Together, the four refused to let up, raining a non-stop proton barrage on Apocalypse's exposed core. With a final booming shriek, the Great Spirit's form finally destabilized enough for Egon to trap him. The blinding energy imploded, then vanished, leaving the warehouse in dusty silence once more. The Ghostbusters hesitantly lifted their heads, almost unable to believe the unfathomable threat had finally been contained. Winston let out a breathless laugh. We did it! We shut down the head spook. Ray nodded, still shocked. I can't believe Egon found his weak spot. Apocalypse seemed unstoppable. All adversaries have an Achilles heel, Egon replied simply. But the rest could see he was just as relieved. Peter clapped a hand on Egon's shoulder. Nice work, Brainiac. Couldn't have pulled this bust off without you. Slimer fluttered over weakly to join the celebration, eliciting a chuckle from the others. Against all odds, they had somehow won out over a truly diabolical threat, albeit by the skin of their teeth. Yet their victory was bittersweet. A heavy uncertainty still hung in the air even with Apocalypse contained. This warehouse, his advanced technologies, the scars left across New York, all sobering reminders that not every battle ends so tidy. But at least for today, the Ghostbusters could rest easy knowing the city was safe once again thanks to their grit, teamwork, and a little supernatural ingenuity. Chapter 13. Early the next morning, the Ghostbusters stood watching solemnly as a sanitation crew finished clearing the wreckage from the pier where Apocalypse had kept his ghostly arsenal. Though the Spectre himself was now safely contained, the scars of his havoc remained. A smoky haze still drifted up from the East River. The warehouse itself sat collapsed, half sunk into the water, after bearing the brunt of both the climactic battle and the ensuing cleanup efforts to dispose of the dangerous occult technology stockpiled inside. Hard to believe one ghost could mastermind such wide-scale chaos, Ray reflected as cranes fished mangled debris from the river. Winston nodded. Oh, kidding. Our city was lucky we stopped him when we did. We all were, said Peter quietly. In the end, Apocalypse's own ambition had proven his downfall. But the havoc he had unleashed in both the human and spectral realms would not soon be forgotten. So what now? Winston asked as they turned away from the grim scene. With Big Scary banished, is it back to routine busts and floating vaporous anomalies? Egon shook his head, gazing back at the rising smoke over the East River. I wish it were that simple, but Apocalypse was merely a symptom. The cause still remains. Ray's eyes widened with realization. Ghosts are us. They supplied all the gear that made his army possible. Correct. That operation must be shut down for good if we want to prevent further technological disruptions to the delicate spectral balance, said Egon. Peter cracked his knuckles. No problem. We'll pay those spook shop crumbs another visit and put them out of business for keeps this time. We must act fast before they have time to regroup or relocate their enterprise, Egon agreed. Armed with proton packs and a wealth of dangerous confiscated occult objects to bag as evidence, the four climbed into Ecto-1 and sped downtown. As they had feared, the Ghost's Aras facade appeared abandoned, shelves barren and windows darkened. The ghostly proprietor had wisely sensed his enterprise was soon to be history following Apocalypse's downfall. But Ray examined the front door locks closely. These weren't forced or blown out. I'd bet my spook blaster he cleared out voluntarily. Then he can't have gotten far, said Winston. We better sweep the perimeter. They split up to cover more ground, searching nearby alleys and side streets. Strange stares and slinking shadows followed the Ghostbusters' every move through this seedy underbelly of the city. After 20 fruitless minutes, Peter was ready to give up. But just then, a cry from Ray crackled over the radios. Guys, I found their stash. Rounding the corner, Peter skidded to a stop beside an overflowing city dumpster. Ray stood on tiptoe, fishing out handfuls of the incriminating anti-ecto suits, psychic frequency modulators, and other illegal ghost tech. Jackpot, said Winston. Looks like Spooky smartened up and ditched the evidence. Peter shook his head. Too bad he wasn't smart enough to beat it out of town for good. For trailing not far behind Ray was the ghost himself, cowering and bracing for impact upon seeing the proton packs aimed his way. All right, Casper, fun's over, said Peter, powering up his thrower. We're shutting down your little operation here for good. The Spectre quailed beneath their glare. Wait, I'm finished providing apparition enhancements, I swear it. Just allow me safe passage to the spirit realm, I beg of you. Peter rolled his eyes. Tell it to the containment unit, pal, you're going away for a long time. But Egon held up a hand thoughtfully. Wait, perhaps we can bargain. He turned to the ghost. You clearly have extensive knowledge regarding interdimensional energy manipulations. Share that intellect, and we'll discuss more lenient sentencing." The spirit wavered, then finally nodded, realizing he had no leverage left. "Very well, my knowledge is yours in return for safe transport home." In the end, the deal was struck. With Ghosts R Us dismantled for good and its owner agreeing to consult peacefully on psychokinetic research, the worst was over. No more empowered apparitions would threaten the city, for today at least. Yet Peter still looked troubled as they watched their captive flow through an open portal back to the spirit plane. "Think we can really trust him to keep his word?" "We'll be watching," Egon assured him. "But for now, the balance is restored." Together the four took one last look around the darkened, emptied shop that had nearly sparked a supernatural downfall. A relic of a fight hard won, but far from forgotten. With time and vigilance, the wounds would heal. Chapter 14. A rare sense of peace and quiet had settled over the firehouse in the weeks since the Ghosts R Us fiasco came to an end. For once, no occult emergencies demanded the Ghostbusters' attention, leaving them time to focus on long overdue administrative chores and housekeeping matters. Winston worked diligently on the overloaded inbox of paperwork requests that had been piling up for months. Sorting through dense stacks of EPA documents, licensing renewals, and outside research proposals was a thankless but necessary task. Meanwhile, Ray and Egon busied themselves fine-tuning the containment system matrix after the sudden influx of rampaging spirits they had been forced to capture. Ensuring the psychokinetic demarcations between entities were properly reinforced was imperative to avoiding chaotic cross-poltergeist contamination. "Levels holding steady at 28,100 microfarads," Ray reported, scrutinizing the monitor tracking the bustling spectral space. "Harmonic oscillations are still well within the safety buffer." Egon echoed approvingly. "Excellent. The system's equilibrium remains stable." Yet his expression was already distracted, focused on examining a smoking ghost trap from their recent requisition. Ray smiled knowingly. Egon's thirst for paranormal analysis was unquenchable. Dangerous proto-demonic entities, interdimensional vortex manipulations, predictions of spectral cataclysms, it was all in a day's research for his brilliant colleague. Across the room, Peter's feet were propped up comfortably as he regaled Janine with the thrilling tale of his showdown against the notorious ghost kingpin, Apocalypse. "So there I was, proton pack powered up, face to face with the single most terrifying specter in the history of forever," Peter recounted dramatically. "He's got me cornered, ready to rip me apart molecule by molecule when boom." Peter mimed an imaginary blast. "I totally nailed him right between the eyes with the all-Boston dart, after that big baby went down faster than a freshman at rush week." Janine rolled her eyes, not looking up from her typing. That's definitely how I heard it happen." "Hey, you weren't there to see my heroic feats of daring do," Peter insisted. "That spook had paranormal threat level 10 written all over him before I brought him down." Across the room, Ray and Egon exchanged an amused look. Peter's flair for dramatic embellishment always emerged during the quiet spells between crises. "Think we should set the record straight?" Ray asked Riley. Egon just chuckled, turning back to his spectral analysis. "I believe Miss Melnitz can sift the facts from Peter's fiction well enough." Their admin work was interrupted then by an odd groaning noise from the direction of the containment system matrix. All activity in the firehouse halted as the Ghostbusters looked to Egon in alarm. It's surging beyond the safety buffer, he reported worriedly, scrutinizing the power levels. Some kind of disruption in the demarcation fields. Ray hurried to stabilize the oscillations before a containment failure occurred. After a tense few minutes of rerouting power and manually recalibrating the generated encasement cells, he stepped back with a relieved sigh. Containment resecured. The others relaxed as well. Nice work, Tex, said Peter. Though you might want to double-check Spang's math there, can't have our ghost prison malfunctioning every time we get a little spring cleaning done around here. Egon shook his head, examining the now stable system closely. These were not routine fluctuations. The attempted destabilizations indicate certain entities are testing the boundaries of their confinement. His expression darkened, growing ever more restless. A somber silence settled around the room. The catastrophic chaos unleashed by escaped spirits years back during the Gozer incident still loomed large in all their minds. Keeping those forces contained and Earth plane protected was a heavy burden for the team to bear. Yet it was their duty nonetheless. And the Ghostbusters swore to uphold it, whatever unrest lurked on the horizon, whatever threats might come raging against the barriers. This time they would be ready. Chapter 15. Sunlight glinted off the calm harbor waters, while seagulls circled lazily overhead. The soft breeze carried hints of salt and peppery scents from a nearby lunch counter. All was peaceful on this picturesque afternoon by the seaside. Peter leaned back in his beach chair, letting out a contented sigh. Gotta hand it to ya, Spangs, this was an absolute ace idea. Here, here, Ray agreed, basking happily beneath a large umbrella. After everything we've endured lately, a seaside retreat is just what we needed. Even Egon had to admit the quiet coastal locale made for a perfectly relaxing getaway. The old lighthouse inn they were staying in had a minimal spectral resonance, allowing the team a rare respite from their usual paranormal pursuits. Winston sat nearby sipping an ice-cold soda, his eyes closed behind sunglasses. Feels good to just slow down and unwind after supernaturally saving the world, and whatnot, especially knowing the Big Apple's in good hands while we're gone. Janine had volunteered to cover the firehouse phone and dispatch emergency calls to other teams as needed during their brief hiatus. Her no-nonsense attitude was well suited for handling any minor ghost outbreaks. Yup, New York's just fine without us for a few days, said Peter contentedly. Well, I'll bet the mayor and the boys down at Fort Detmering started missing my winning smile right about now. Ray chuckled. And I'm sure the city's spectral population won't miss getting busted by us one bit while we're away. Their conversation was interrupted by Slimer excitedly zooming over clutching a pamphlet advertising deep-sea fishing charters. Though still recovering from multiple rough tussles with unruly specters recently, the little ghost's enthusiasm could not be contained. Ray smiled sympathetically. Don't worry, we're not gonna make you get on board some fishing boat out there, Slimer. We know that much ocean exposure would destabilize your ectoplasmic form pretty quick. Slimer looked slightly relieved not to be dragged aboard a seafaring vessel, though a hint of disappointment showed in his eyes too. He loved trying new surface world adventures with his friends. Tell you what, little Spud, soon as we get back to New York, I'll take you to that new all-you-can-eat dessert buffet you've been eyeing, Peter promised. That instantly buoyed the green ghost's spirits once more. With delighted babbles, he zipped off to continue exploring the seaside attractions, though giving the charter boats a wide berth. Peter leaned back again with a contented sigh as the warm sunshine washed over him. Like I said, fellas, this was an ace idea. His companions concurred wholeheartedly. After enduring a gauntlet of perilous battles and supernatural threats overwhelming the city, some rest and relaxation had been sorely needed. Out here by the sea, no urgencies demanded their attention. No crises required their expertise. The worries of the world drifted away in the salty breeze. But despite the calm seaside atmosphere, a vigilant awareness never fully left the Ghostbusters. Their highly attuned senses stayed subtly alert for even the slightest spike in spectral activity. Like firefighters always listening for the alarm bell, the instinct was ingrained. Because the team knew full well this period of peace could never last forever. Danger waited just beyond the horizon, though its shape remained unknown. Some new unrest would inevitably shatter the quiet once more. Yet, with steadfast camaraderie and hard-won experience now under their belts, the Ghostbusters stood ready to face the oncoming storms, ghosts, ghouls, and phantasmagoric foes be damned. The spectral and human planes were under their protection, and they would prove ready for any challenge, any calamity, any supernatural siege, defending their city, their world, and each other unto the very end. This was the duty they had sworn themselves to, and they would not falter. The end.